Mark lived on a street where everything looked planned. The houses had matching mailboxes. The lawns were cut at the same height. The trash cans were pulled in at the same time. People smiled when they passed each other, but most of the time they kept moving. It was the kind of place where quiet felt like a rule, not just a habit. Mark was not a noisy person. He worked weekdays at a local repair shop. He fixed broken machines, old generators, and small engines that other people gave up on. He liked the feeling of making something work again. On weekends, he liked simple things. He liked grilled food. He liked music that stayed low. He liked friends who laughed without trying to be the center of attention. That Friday, Mark planned a small garage party. He did not call it a party in his own mind. He thought of it as a hangout. A few friends had been asking for weeks. They all had different schedules. Some worked nights. Some worked long shifts. Mark finally picked a time when most could come. He cleaned his garage in the afternoon. He moved his tool bench to the side. He stacked boxes neatly against the wall. He swept the floor until it looked almost new. He hung warm string lights along the ceiling beams. He set up one long folding table and covered it with a simple cloth. He placed paper plates in a stack and put cups beside them. He also set a cooler near the corner. Everything looked calm and organized. By early evening, the sun began to drop behind the trees. A soft breeze moved through the street. Mark rolled up the garage door halfway, leaving it open enough for air but not wide enough to broadcast the whole scene. He wanted it relaxed. He also wanted it respectful to neighbors. The first car pulled in at 6. It was a small sedan. Mark recognized it right away. His friend Tom stepped out, holding a bag of chips and a small box of cookies. Tom gave a friendly wave. Mark smiled and greeted him at the driveway. They talked for a moment about work and the week. Then they walked into the garage. More cars came slowly after that. No one rushed. No one made a big entrance. A woman named Mia brought a tray of sandwiches. A man named Ray carried a pack of soda. Another guest brought a bag of ice. They all helped without being asked. They arranged food neatly and kept the space clear. The music played from a small speaker on low volume. It was the kind of sound that stayed inside the garage, not the kind that spilled across the street. To anyone watching, it was a normal group of adults relaxing. What most people on the street did not know was that many of Mark's friends worked in public service. Some were off-duty officers. Some worked in dispatch. Some worked in community safety roles. They did not talk about work much tonight. They were tired of stress and wanted a break. They joked about sports and food. They told stories about their kids. They teased Mark about how clean his garage was. Mark stood near the grill outside the garage opening. He flipped burgers carefully. He kept the grill away from anything that could be risky. He checked the heat and watched the smoke. The smell of food drifted gently into the air. It was pleasant, not heavy. Across the street, Linda noticed the cars. Linda lived alone and paid close attention to the neighborhood. She believed rules were what kept life safe. She served on the HOA board and took that role very seriously. She had strong opinions about what was allowed and what was not. Some neighbors felt she went too far, but most avoided conflict by staying quiet. Linda looked through her window and counted the cars with a tight expression. She did not like gatherings. She did not like surprises. She especially did not like anything that looked like a crowd. She assumed a crowd always meant trouble, even when there was no evidence. She stepped outside and walked toward her mailbox, moving slowly as if she had all the time in the world. She listened. She did not hear shouting. She did not hear loud music. She heard laughter, but it was not wild. It sounded like friends sharing a good moment. Still, Linda's face did not soften. She looked at the cars again and then at Mark's open garage. Linda went back inside and sat at her kitchen table. She opened her HOA folder and flipped pages like she was searching for a reason. She did not find anything clear, but that did not stop her. She picked up her phone. Her fingers moved fast, and her voice sounded sharp and confident. She called emergency services and reported a disturbance. She claimed there was a loud party in the garage. She said there were too many vehicles and that she feared the situation could become unsafe. She used serious words, hoping they would create quick action. She did not mention that she had not asked Mark a single question. Back in the garage, Mark had no idea a call had been made. He was handing a plate to Mia. Tom was telling a story about his little nephew learning to ride a bike. People laughed softly. One guest was playing a simple card game at the table. Another guest was helping Mark restock napkins. The mood was calm and respectful. About 15 minutes later, flashing lights appeared at the far end of the street. A patrol car moved slowly, not rushing. Mark noticed it first because he was near the opening. He lowered the music with one hand. His face stayed calm. His guests noticed too, and conversation paused naturally. The patrol car stopped near the curb. Two uniformed officers stepped out. They walked with a professional posture, scanning the scene. They were prepared to handle whatever they might find. They approached Mark's driveway. Mark stepped forward politely. He kept his hands visible and his voice steady. He greeted them in a respectful way. Before the officers could ask their first question, one of the guests in the garage recognized them. The guest raised a hand and said hello, using the officer's name in a friendly tone. The officers paused. Their expressions shifted from alert to confused. They looked into the garage and saw familiar faces. Several guests nodded calmly. A few even stood up out of simple respect. The officers took in the clean setup, the low music, and the quiet tone. Nothing matched the report they received. One officer asked a few basic questions. Mark answered clearly. He explained it was a small gathering of friends. He said the music was low and that everyone was keeping things respectful. The officer glanced at the scene again, then gave a small nod. At that moment, Linda watched from behind her curtain. She expected the officers to shut it down. She expected raised voices and warnings. Instead, she saw calm conversation. She saw no one arguing. She saw no one acting out. She could not hear the words, but she could see the body language. It looked friendly, not threatening. The officers finished their check quickly. They reminded Mark to keep it quiet, which Mark was already doing. Mark thanked them. The officers returned to their car. The lights switched off. The street became calm again. Inside the garage, people exhaled and smiled. A few guests shared a quick joke, but nobody mocked the officers. They understood calls had to be checked. They respected the process. Mark shook his head with a tired little smile. He did not feel angry yet. He felt confused about why anyone would report them. Across the street, Linda's face tightened as she watched the officers leave. She did not get the result she wanted. She did not understand why the situation looked so controlled. She told herself it was not over. She believed if she pushed harder, she could force the neighborhood back into the shape she wanted. Mark did not know it yet, but that phone call had started something bigger than a simple misunderstanding. The next day, the entire street would be talking, and the truth behind the call would come out in a way Linda did not expect. The next morning the street woke up like any other day. The sun rose slowly over the houses. Birds sat on the power lines. People stepped outside to grab newspapers or check their cars. On the surface, everything looked normal. Underneath that calm, a quiet tension was starting to grow. Mark woke early. He always did, even on weekends. He made coffee and stood by his kitchen window. He looked out at the street with a thoughtful expression. The night before stayed in his mind. He was not angry, but he felt unsettled. He had done nothing wrong, yet someone had tried to turn a peaceful moment into a problem. He cleaned the garage again that morning. He folded chairs and stacked them neatly. He wiped the table and put his tools back in place. As he worked, He thought about the faces of his friends when the patrol car arrived. No fear had shown. No panic. Just calm awareness. That calm made him proud. Across the street, Linda was also awake early. She sat at her dining table with her notebook open. She had written down the time of the gathering, the number of cars, and the arrival of the patrol vehicle. In her mind, the night had not gone the way it should have. She believed authority should always agree with her concerns. When that did not happen, she felt ignored. Linda decided she needed support. She picked up her phone and started sending messages to other HOA members. She described the gathering in dramatic terms. She claimed the situation had been brushed off. She said the neighborhood was becoming unsafe. She wanted a meeting as soon as possible. By mid-morning, a few neighbors had already heard whispers. People talked while watering plants. They spoke quietly at the mailbox. Some wondered why officers had been called at all. Others felt uncomfortable knowing someone had made a report without even speaking to Mark first. Tom stopped by Mark's house around 10. He carried 2 cups of coffee. Mark smiled when he saw him. They sat on the front steps. Tom shook his head and laughed lightly. Tom said the situation was strange. He said everyone had been respectful. He said the officers had clearly seen that. Mark nodded. He said he wished people talked before calling for help. He said problems grew bigger when people skipped simple conversation. More friends messaged Mark that day. They checked in to see how he was feeling. Some shared similar stories from their own neighborhoods. Stories where assumptions caused trouble. Stories where calm behavior avoided bigger issues. Around noon, Linda walked the street with purpose. She knocked on doors of neighbors she trusted. She wanted agreement. Some listened politely but did not commit. Others told her the gathering had seemed fine. That response frustrated her. She felt like she was losing control. That afternoon, the HOA board scheduled a meeting for the next evening. Notices went out quickly. The topic was community standards and recent events. Mark received the notice in his mailbox. He read it carefully. He sighed, then folded the paper and set it down. Mark did not plan to argue. He believed in listening first. He believed calm words carried more weight than raised voices. Still, he knew he needed to speak for himself. He also knew he would not be alone. The next day arrived with gray clouds. The air felt heavy. Neighbors walked into the community hall with mixed expressions. Some looked curious. Some looked nervous. Linda sat at the front table with her notes lined up neatly. She wore a serious expression and tapped her pen often. Mark arrived a few minutes early. He took a seat near the middle. He kept his posture relaxed. One by one, his friends arrived too. They sat separately, not as a group. To an outsider, it looked random. To Linda, it felt unsettling. The meeting began with routine items. Budget notes. Maintenance updates. Then Linda cleared her throat and brought up the incident. She described the garage gathering again. She spoke about noise, safety, and fear. Her voice rose slightly as she talked. When she finished, the room stayed quiet for a moment. Then the HOA chair invited Mark to speak. Mark stood slowly. He thanked everyone for listening. He explained the event clearly. He said it was a small gathering. He said the music stayed low. He said everyone had parked properly. He said no rules were broken. He also said something else. He said he wished someone had spoken to him directly. He said community worked best when people talked face to face. His voice stayed steady. His words were simple. The room listened. Then something unexpected happened. One by one, people stood up. Not all at once. One neighbor said they had walked past the house that night and heard nothing wrong. Another said the street had felt peaceful. Another said they were uncomfortable with emergency calls being used without real danger. Linda's expression tightened. She looked around the room. She had expected support. Instead, she saw doubt. The HOA chair asked if anyone else wanted to speak. A man near the back stood up. He introduced himself calmly. He explained his background in public service. He said calls like the one made could pull resources away from real needs. He said it was important to use them wisely. The room grew very quiet. Linda shifted in her chair. She looked down at her notes. Her pen stopped tapping. The chair thanked everyone and summarized the discussion. He said no violations had occurred. He said future concerns should be addressed directly when possible. He said the goal was respect, not control. When the meeting ended, people stood and talked quietly. Some nodded at Mark. Some thanked him for speaking calmly. Mark felt relief. Not victory, but relief. Linda left quickly. She did not stop to talk. Her steps were fast. Her shoulders were tense. She felt embarrassed, though she would not admit it. Outside, the sky began to clear. Sunlight broke through the clouds. Mark stood for a moment before heading home. He knew the situation was not fully over, but something had changed. The street would not forget what happened. People had seen how assumptions could backfire. They had seen how calm truth carried power. And they had seen that respect worked better than fear. For Linda, the lesson was harder. She felt watched now, not in anger, but in awareness. The control she once felt was slipping, replaced by something she did not like. For Mark, the lesson was clear. Standing calmly in truth mattered. And sometimes, the quiet response was the strongest one of all. After the HOA meeting, the neighborhood felt different. Nothing had changed on the surface. The houses still looked the same. The lawns were still neat. The streetlights still came on at the same time. But the feeling between people had shifted. Many neighbors had begun to notice how often Linda tried to control small things. Now they were paying attention in a new way. Mark went back to his normal routine. He worked on Saturday morning, then stopped at a small store for groceries. When he returned, he saw a few neighbors outside. They smiled at him more warmly than before. Some even walked over to talk. A neighbor named Sam asked Mark if he was doing all right. Mark said he was fine. Sam shook his head and said the call had been unnecessary. Mark replied calmly. He said he did not want bad feelings. He only wanted peace. Sam nodded and said peace also needed fairness. In the next few days, Linda started acting more careful. She still walked around with her notebook, but she kept her distance. She watched people from her yard instead of stepping into the street. She knew the meeting had not gone her way. She also knew many people had disagreed with her in public. That was not something she could easily accept. Linda believed she had been embarrassed. She believed Mark and his friends had turned the community against her. In her mind, she had not done anything wrong. She told herself she was protecting the neighborhood. She told herself she was the only one brave enough to act. Those thoughts kept her angry. On Tuesday evening, Mark was in his garage again. This time he was alone. He was fixing an old mower for a neighbor. The garage door was open halfway, the same as before. The street was quiet. The only sound was the soft click of tools. Linda walked by slowly. She paused near Mark's driveway. Mark noticed her and stood up. He wiped his hands with a cloth. He gave a polite nod. Linda looked at him with a stiff expression. She did not greet him. Mark decided to speak first. He said hello in a calm voice. He asked if everything was okay. Linda hesitated. She looked like she wanted to say something sharp, but she stopped herself. She said the neighborhood had rules for a reason. Mark nodded and said he agreed. He said rules mattered, but respect also mattered. Linda's face tightened. She said she had felt uncomfortable that night. Mark listened without interrupting. Then he said something simple. He said if she had come over and asked, he would have explained. He said he would have lowered the music even more if she had requested. He said he did not want anyone to feel unsafe. He only wanted a calm gathering with friends. Linda looked away. She did not reply for a moment. Then she said she did what she thought was right. Mark nodded again. He said he understood that she wanted safety. He said he wanted the same thing. He said the difference was how they handled it. Linda did not like hearing that. She turned and walked away without saying goodbye. Mark watched her go and sighed quietly. He felt sad more than angry. He could see that Linda carried stress and fear inside her. He also knew that fear could cause people to act in harmful ways, even if they thought they were doing good. That weekend, Mark received an invitation from Sam. Sam wanted to host a neighborhood barbecue in the park. It was meant to bring people together. It was meant to improve community trust. Mark liked the idea. He agreed to help. Word spread quickly. Many neighbors wanted something positive after the tension. They wanted smiles instead of complaints. They wanted to know each other beyond quick waves. On Sunday afternoon, families arrived at the park. Kids played on the grass. People brought food and drinks. Some brought small games. The atmosphere felt light. Mark stood by a grill and helped cook. He laughed with neighbors he had never really spoken to before. He learned their names. He heard their stories. He felt the neighborhood becoming more human. A few of Mark's friends came too. They wore casual clothes and stayed friendly but quiet. They did not bring up the past situation. They just joined the event like normal people. Many neighbors greeted them warmly, even if they did not know their jobs. Linda arrived late. She stood at the edge of the park with folded arms. She looked around as if searching for problems. But she found none. She saw children laughing. She saw neighbors sharing food. She saw Mark handing plates to older residents. She saw kindness. Sam noticed Linda and walked over. He invited her to join. Linda hesitated. She looked like she wanted to refuse. But then she stepped forward slowly and took a seat at a picnic table. For a while, she stayed silent. She watched people. She listened to conversation. She heard normal talk about school, work, and weather. No one mentioned the 911 call. No one pointed fingers. They simply included her like she was part of the community. A woman named Nora sat beside Linda and offered her a plate. Nora smiled and asked how her week had been. Linda looked surprised. She expected cold looks. She expected people to avoid her. Instead, she received a simple question and a gentle smile. Linda took the plate. Her hands shook slightly, but she hid it. She thanked Nora quietly. Nora asked about Linda's garden. Linda answered in short words at first. Then slowly, she shared more. She talked about how she liked order. She talked about how she disliked sudden changes. She talked about how quiet made her feel safe. Nora listened without judging. She nodded and said she understood. She also said people needed space to breathe. She said community could still be safe even when people had fun. Linda looked down at her plate. She did not argue. She seemed to think deeply. Mark noticed from a distance. He saw Linda speaking calmly. That was new. As the afternoon continued, Linda relaxed a little. She still looked serious, but her shoulders lowered. She even gave a small smile when a child waved at her. It was not a big change, but it was something. Near the end of the event, Sam stood and thanked everyone for coming. He said the neighborhood was stronger when people talked. He said trust was built with simple moments. People clapped lightly. Mark helped clean up. As he carried empty bags to a trash bin, he noticed Linda standing alone near the path. She looked like she wanted to leave without speaking. Mark walked over slowly and stopped a respectful distance away. He said he hoped she enjoyed the barbecue. Linda looked at him. Her eyes were guarded, but softer than before. She said it was fine. Then after a pause, She said something unexpected. She said the neighborhood had felt peaceful today. Mark nodded. He said it could feel like that more often. He said it only required a little trust. Linda did not reply right away. Then she gave a small nod. It was not an apology, but it was not resistance either. Mark walked away feeling hopeful. The situation had started with fear and control, but it might end with understanding. Still, he knew some lessons took time. Some people changed slowly. But today showed that change was possible. And the street, once quiet for the wrong reasons, was learning to become quiet with peace instead of pressure. The week after the park barbecue, the neighborhood felt calmer. People greeted each other more often. A few neighbors started taking evening walks together. Some even shared extra food across fences. The street still loved quiet, but now it felt like friendly quiet, not forced quiet. Mark kept doing his normal work, but he noticed small changes around him. Sam waved every morning. Nora stopped to talk when she saw Mark outside. A couple of older neighbors asked Mark for help with small repairs. Mark felt useful, and he liked that. He also felt the community becoming less like a rulebook and more like a group of real people. Linda stayed quieter than usual. She still checked the street, but she was not as loud about it. Her notebook did not disappear, but it seemed to stay closed more often. She attended the next HOA meeting, yet she did not bring up a complaint. That surprised some people. One evening, Mark was working in his garage when he heard a car horn outside. It was a short horn, not angry, just alert. He stepped out and saw a moving truck stopped 2 houses down. A young couple was unloading boxes. A heavy couch sat halfway on a dolly. The dolly wheels were stuck at the edge of the sidewalk. Mark walked over to help. He did not ask many questions. He simply offered his hands. The couple looked relieved. The man said his name was Alex. The woman said her name was Rosa. They thanked Mark and explained they had just moved in. Mark helped them lift the couch carefully and guide it up the path. As they worked, Linda appeared on her porch. Mark noticed her watching. Her expression looked serious again, like she was preparing to step in. The moving truck was parked near a corner. It was not blocking traffic fully, but it made the street feel narrower. A few cars slowed down to pass. The couple did not realize how much attention the truck was getting. Linda walked across the street and stopped near the truck. She looked at Alex and Rosa and spoke with a firm voice. She asked if they had permission to park a truck there. She asked how long it would be. Her words were not rude, but they sounded cold. Rosa looked nervous. She said they would be done soon. Alex apologized and said they were trying their best. Linda's eyes moved to the boxes on the grass. She started listing rules about sidewalks and yard space. Mark stepped closer and spoke calmly. He told Linda they were new and still learning. He told her they were not trying to cause trouble. He said he was helping and everything would be cleaned up. Linda looked at Mark. For a moment, she seemed ready to argue. Then she paused. She glanced at Rosa's worried face and Alex's tired eyes. She took a slow breath. Linda said she only wanted things to be safe. Mark nodded. He said safety mattered, and helping new neighbors also mattered. Linda stood still. Then she did something unexpected. She pointed to a better place for the truck to park, a spot that would leave more room. She said it would be easier for everyone. Her voice stayed firm, but it sounded more helpful than controlling. Alex thanked her quickly. Rosa smiled with relief. The tension lowered right away. Mark felt surprised, but in a good way. Linda had offered a solution instead of a threat. The rest of the evening became a quiet teamwork effort. Mark helped carry boxes. Sam came out and offered a hand too. Nora brought bottles of water. Even a few teens from the street helped move smaller items. Alex and Rosa looked amazed. They had expected strangers. They found a team. Linda did not carry boxes, but she stayed nearby. She watched the sidewalk and pointed out where things could be placed without blocking the path. She reminded people to keep the driveway clear. This time, her words felt like guidance, not pressure. People listened because it actually helped. When the truck was finally emptied, Alex and Rosa thanked everyone. They looked tired but happy. Rosa said she had never seen neighbors help like this before. Mark smiled and said the street was learning. As the group started to leave, Linda remained near the curb. Mark noticed she was standing alone again. He walked over, keeping his tone gentle. He thanked her for helping with the truck situation. Linda looked at him and gave a small nod. She said she did not like chaos. She said moving days felt like chaos. Mark replied that he understood. He said chaos felt smaller when people worked together. Linda did not respond right away, but she did not walk away either. The next day, a message appeared in the neighborhood group chat. It was from Alex. He thanked everyone for welcoming them. He said he wanted to return the kindness. He asked if anyone needed help with anything. People responded warmly. Linda read the messages too. She did not reply, but she watched the kindness spread. She could not deny that something was changing. A few days later, another small situation happened. A child's bike went missing from a front yard. The parents were worried. The street started talking. Some people blamed outsiders right away. Some blamed teenagers. The worry began to grow fast. Mark heard about it while coming home from work. He decided to help calmly. He spoke to the parents and asked for details. He asked what time the bike was last seen and what color it was. The parents described it and said the child was upset. Mark posted a message in the group chat asking everyone to check their garages and yards in case it was moved by accident. He asked people to stay calm and not accuse anyone without proof. Linda also heard about the missing bike. Mark expected her to blame someone fast. Instead, Linda surprised him again. She wrote a message in the group chat. She asked people to look carefully but also reminded them not to jump to harsh conclusions. She said misunderstandings happened. People noticed that message. It felt different from her old style. It felt like she was trying. That evening, the bike was found. It had been pushed behind a hedge by a child who was playing and forgot. The parents felt relieved. The child was happy again. The street breathed out together. Mark noticed something important. The neighborhood had faced a worry, but it did not turn into a fight. People had stayed calm. They had worked together. Linda had not poured fear on the situation. That was a real change. Later that night, Mark sat in his garage, looking at the warm lights he had hung weeks earlier. He remembered the first night, the patrol car, and the tension. Now he saw a new path forming. A path where people learned to communicate, not control. A path where safety and kindness could exist together. Linda still had her habits. She still liked rules. She still watched the street. But now she was beginning to understand something deeper. She was seeing that control did not create trust. Trust created safety. And the biggest proof was simple. The neighborhood was not falling apart without fear. It was growing stronger with respect. The month moved forward and the neighborhood kept changing in small ways. People still cared about clean lawns and quiet nights, but now they cared about each other too. The street felt less like a place where everyone watched for mistakes. It felt more like a place where people noticed needs. Mark did not try to become a leader. He did not give big speeches. He did not demand attention. He simply kept showing up with steady calm. He helped fix things. He greeted people with respect. He listened more than he spoke. Somehow that made others trust him. Alex and Rosa settled into their new home. They painted their front door a soft color and added plants by the steps. They smiled often and waved at everyone. They joined walks with Sam and Nora. They even invited a few neighbors for tea one afternoon. The group chat became more active, but in a good way. People shared lost pet alerts, extra food offers, and simple updates. Linda watched all of this quietly. She still felt a need for order, but she also felt something she had not expected. She felt left out. Not because people were punishing her, but because they were forming bonds that did not need her approval. That realization sat heavy in her chest. One afternoon, Linda received a letter in the mail. It was from the city. It explained that repeated emergency calls without real danger could lead to consequences. The letter did not accuse her directly in harsh words, but the meaning was clear. It was a warning. Linda read it twice, then sat down slowly. Her hands felt cold. She remembered the night she made the call about Mark's garage gathering. She remembered how confident she felt while speaking. Now she felt embarrassed again, but deeper this time. She realized her choices had reached beyond the neighborhood. They had reached official records and city attention. Linda did not sleep well that night. She replayed the past weeks in her mind. She remembered Mark's calm voice when he asked if she was okay. She remembered the barbecue where no one attacked her. She remembered the moving truck situation where she chose to guide instead of accuse. She realized she had two paths. One path was stubborn pride. The other path was change. The next day, Linda walked outside and stood near her mailbox. She watched Mark come home from work. He carried a small bag and looked tired. Linda felt her heart beat faster. She was not used to admitting mistakes. It felt like stepping into cold water. Mark noticed her and gave a polite nod. He was about to walk inside when Linda spoke. Her voice was not sharp this time. It sounded quiet and careful. She asked if he had a moment. Mark paused. He looked surprised, then nodded. They stood on the sidewalk with space between them. Linda's eyes moved to the ground, then back up. She took a slow breath. Linda said she had received a warning letter. She said it made her think about her actions. She said she had been wrong to call emergency services over something that was not dangerous. The words came out slowly, like they were heavy to carry. Then she said she was sorry. Mark did not respond immediately. He looked at her face. He could see effort there. He could see fear too. He nodded gently and said he appreciated her saying that. He said he did not want anyone to be in trouble. He said he only wanted neighbors to treat each other fairly. Linda's eyes looked wet, but she blinked quickly. She said she had been afraid of losing control. She said she believed rules were the only thing keeping life stable. She said she did not realize how much her fear had pushed people away. Mark listened patiently. Then he said something simple. He said stability could come from trust as well. He said rules were useful, but they were not the whole foundation. He said people needed kindness in the foundation too. Linda nodded slowly. She asked what she could do now. Mark said she could start by speaking directly when she had concerns. He said she could also join the community in positive ways. He said small steps were enough. That weekend, Sam announced another neighborhood event. This time it was a garage sale day mixed with a small food table near the park. People could sell old items, trade things, and share snacks. It was meant to be fun, not perfect. Linda surprised everyone by joining. She placed a small table in her driveway with old books, garden tools, and a few house items. She organized them neatly, of course. But she also added something new. She placed a small sign that said free cookies for kids. She did not make it fancy. She simply offered it. At first, people approached carefully. They still remembered her old ways. But then they saw her smile. It was a small smile, but it was real. She greeted people politely. She did not criticize parking or lawn lines. She asked simple questions like how someone's week was going. A child walked up shyly and reached for a cookie. Linda offered it gently. The child smiled and ran back to a parent. The parent looked surprised and nodded in thanks. Linda nodded back. Her shoulders relaxed a little. Mark walked by later and noticed the sign. He felt a quiet respect. He did not clap or make a big moment. He simply stopped and said he liked the idea. Linda looked at him and said she was trying. During the event, something else happened that showed how much the neighborhood had changed. A car drove through slowly and stopped near the park. The driver looked lost. He asked for directions. Several neighbors stepped forward to help. No one assumed danger. No one panicked. They just helped. Linda watched that too. She noticed how calm the street stayed. She realized that safety was not always loud. Sometimes safety was people watching out for each other with steady kindness. Near sunset, Sam gathered everyone near the park table and thanked them. He said it felt like a real community now. He said the street had learned a lesson without becoming bitter. People clapped lightly. Kids laughed. The air smelled like food and warm evening wind. Linda stood slightly to the side, holding a small plate. She looked around at neighbors talking and smiling. She saw Mark helping an older man carry a box. She saw Rosa laughing with Nora. She saw Alex offering to fix a loose fence for someone. She saw Sam chatting with teens, treating them like they mattered. Linda felt something in her chest loosen. It was not perfect. She still liked order. She still wanted quiet. But now she saw that quiet could be chosen, not forced. She saw that respect could guide a street better than fear ever could. As night came, Mark returned to his garage and turned on the warm lights. He stood for a moment and listened. No patrol car. No tension. Just distant laughter from neighbors saying goodbye. Mark smiled to himself. The story that began with a phone call had ended with a lesson. The neighborhood did not need a single person controlling it. It needed people caring for it. And even Linda, once known for complaints, was learning to be part of that care. The street stayed quiet that night, but it was the kind of quiet that felt like peace.